I am Reed. I am 27, just an average dude. IV made tons of money mistakes in my 20s, and now I want to share everything I've learned to help you take control of your finances and your life. So I saw this post online the other day from a guy who just uploaded his first YouTube video in like a decade, and man, reading it hit me different. He was talking about how back in 2009, he was this kid making Call of Duty montages, Modern Warfare 2, Black Ops Zombies, Minecraft, staying up late with friends, life was simple, life was good. He had like 300 subscribers and 1,000 views on his best video, and he thought he was going to be the next big thing. Then high school happened, then college, then the job market, then relationships. Then suddenly you wake up one day and you are in your late 20s living in your parents' basement wondering where the time went. And I read that and I was like, oh shit, that is basically my story too. I think a lot of us in our 20s have this moment where we look back and realize we kind of lost ourselves. We had these huge dreams when we were kids, right? I wanted to be a professional gamer. I wanted to be a YouTuber. I wanted to travel the world and do something meaningful, but then society tells you, hey, you need to get a real job, you need to be responsible, you need to stop playing games and start thinking about your future. And slowly, without even noticing it, you start buying into that. You start chasing the paycheck. You start caring about what other people think. You start measuring success by how much money you make and what car you drive and whether you have a 401k. And before you know it, you are 27 years old. You have a stable job. You are paying your bills on time. You are doing everything you are supposed to do, but you feel completely empty inside. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not saying having a stable job is a bad thing. It is not. I have a stable job right now and I am grateful for it. It pays my bills. It gives me security. It lets me sleep at night knowing I am not going to end up broke on the street. But here's the thing that nobody tells you about stability. It can be a trap. It can become this comfortable cage where you stop taking risks because you are too scared of losing what you have. And that is exactly what happened to me. When I was 20, I was a mess financially. I mean, a complete disaster. I was living paycheck to paycheck. I had credit card debt piling up. I was financing things I couldn't afford just to look like I had my life together. I had this mindset that I needed to spend money to look successful, which is honestly the dumbest thing I've ever done. I was driving a car I couldn't afford, eating out every single day, buying clothes I didn't need, and wondering why I was always broke. And the worst part is I knew better. I knew I was making bad decisions, but I just kept doing it anyway because it felt good in the moment. That guy who made that post about coming back to YouTube after a decade, he talked about how life hits you and slowly your dreams become more and more unrealistic. And I think the same thing happens with your finances. You start off thinking you LL be smart with money, you LL save, you LL invest, you LL build wealth. But then life happens and you justify little expenses here and there. And suddenly you are 27 with barely any savings and no real plan for the future. For me, the wake-up call came when I was about 23. I remember sitting in my room looking at my bank account and realizing I had like $200 to my name. I had a full-time job. I was making decent money, but I had absolutely nothing to show for it. I was stressed all the time. I couldn't sleep. I was constantly worried about money. And I thought to myself, this is not how I want to live the rest of my life. Something has to change. So I started reading. I started learning about personal finance, about budgeting, about investing. I didn't have anyone to teach me. My parents never talked about money. My friends were all in the same boat, so I had to figure it out myself. And the first thing I learned was that I needed to stop lying to myself. I needed to look at my spending honestly and admit that I was the problem. Not my income, not my job, not the economy, me. I was spending too much money on stupid stuff and I needed to stop. The second thing I learned was that I needed a system. I could just rely on willpower because willpower runs out. So I set up automatic transfers to my savings account. I created a budget that actually made sense for my life. I cut out all the unnecessary subscriptions and memberships I was using, and slowly but surely I started getting control of my money. Now I am 27 and I am in a completely different place financially. I have an emergency fund that covers 6 months of expenses. I have no credit card debt. I contribute to my retirement accounts every month, and I have money set aside for things I actually care about. I am not rich. I am not going to retire early. I am not some financial guru, but I am stable. And more importantly, I have options. And that is really what this whole journey has been about for me. It is not about getting rich. It is about having options. It is about not being trapped in a life you don't want because you are too broke to leave. It is about being able to take risks like starting a YouTube channel without worrying about how you are going to pay rent next month. That guy who made that post, he said he is in his late 20s with a stable job living a simple life from his parents' basement. And he said on paper he is doing well, but he wants something more. He doesn't want to resolve to a normal life of waking up, working, paying bills, and repeating. I feel that's so hard because that is exactly where I was a few years ago. I had the stable job, I had the routines, I had everything I was supposed to have, but I felt like I was just going through the motions, and I think a lot of people in their 20s feel this way. We retold that if we work hard and play by the rules, we be happy. But then we get to this point and we realize that happiness doesn't come from a paycheck or a job title. It comes from doing things that matter to you. from chasing the things that light you up inside, from being true to yourself even when it does make sense to other people. The thing that really struck me about his post was when he talked about his childhood dreams. He said he was once a kid with dreams, and now he is an adult who wants to keep those dreams alive. And he talked about wanting to document his life journey, to share with his family, to connect with his younger self, and to help people who are feeling lost like he was. That is beautiful, man. That is the kind of thing that actually matters. When I look back at my own journey, I realized that the best decisions I made were the ones that scared me. Moving out on my own, changing careers, starting a side hustle even though it failed, having difficult conversations about money with people I love. Every single time I stepped outside my comfort zone, I grew. And every single time I stayed comfortable, I stagnated. So here is my advice to anyone in their 20s who feels stuck. First, get your finances in order. You cannot chase your dreams if you are drowning in debt and living paycheck to paycheck. Cut your expenses, build an emergency fund, pay off high-interest debt. Do the boring stuff first. It is not sexy, it is not exciting, but it gives you the freedom to take risks later. Second, stop comparing yourself to other people. Social media is a highlight reel. You see people your age buying houses, traveling the world, starting successful businesses, and you feel like you are falling behind, but you don't see their debt. You don't see their stress. You don't see the sacrifices they were making behind the scenes. Run your own race, focus on your own progress. Third, give yourself permission to chase your dreams. I know it sounds cheesy, but it is true. We spend so much time telling ourselves we can do something that we never even try. That guy who made that post, he is 27 years old, living in his parents' basement, and he decided to start a YouTube channel again after a decade. Most people would look at that and say, what is the point? You are too old. You missed your chance. You LL never make it. But he did it anyway. And that takes guts. I think a lot of us are scared to fail. We scared to look stupid. We scared to waste time. We scared to put ourselves out there and get rejected. But here's the thing, you are going to fail at some things in life. That is inevitable. What is not inevitable is letting that fear stop you from trying. Ivy failed at plenty of things. I started a business that went nowhere. I had relationships that ended badly. I made investments that lost money, but every single failure taught me something I needed to learn. The guy in the post talked about how he is willing to take risks now and has more confidence than he did in the past. And I think that comes with age and experience. When you are 20, you think you have all the time in the world. When you are 27, you realize that time is actually finite and you need to start making moves. But that realization is not a bad thing. It is actually freeing because it pushes you to stop waiting and start doing. I am not saying you should quit your job tomorrow and go all in on some crazy dream. That is usually a recipe for disaster. What I am saying is start small, start a side project, learn a new skill, save up some money so you have a cushion, and then start taking calculated risks. The goal is not to blow up your life. It is to build something meaningful on the side until it is big enough to replace what you are doing now. That guy's story about coming back to YouTube reminded me of something important. It is never too late to start again. It doesn't matter if you tried something 10 years ago and it didn't work out. It does matter if you feel like you wasted years of your life. What matters is what you do right now. Today, with the time and resources you have. I also want to talk about the money side of chasing dreams because nobody talks about this when you decide to go after something you actually care about. You are probably going to make less money in the beginning. That is just reality. You might have to work 2 jobs. You might have to live with roommates or family. You might have to drive an old car and eat cheap food for a while. And that is okay. Temporary sacrifice for long-term fulfillment is worth it, but you have to be smart about it. Don T, go into debt to chase a dream. Don T, quit your job with no savings and no plan. Be strategic. Build your financial foundation first, then take the leap. That is what I did. I spent 2 years getting my finances in order, paying off debt, building my emergency fund, learning new skills, and then I started making moves. It took longer than I wanted, but it was sustainable. And I didn't end up broke and desperate. I think the biggest mistake people in their 20s make is wanting everything right now. They want the YouTube channel to blow up overnight. They want the business to be profitable in 6 months. They want the investment portfolio to double in a year, and when that doesn't happen, they get discouraged and quit. But real success takes time, real wealth takes time, real fulfillment takes time, and you have to be willing to put in the work even when nobody is watching and nothing seems to be happening. The guy who made that post, he talked about his old Call of Duty videos being so bad that he made them private. That made me laugh because I've been there. I've made content that I am embarrassed to look back on. I've made decisions that I cringe about now. I've wasted money and time on things that went nowhere. But you know what? That is part of the process. You can skip the awkward learning phase. You have to go through it to get better. So here's my challenge to you. If you are reading this, think about something you wanted to do when you were younger, something that made you excited, something that lit you up inside. Maybe it is making videos, maybe it is starting a business, maybe it is writing a book, maybe it is traveling, maybe it is learning an instrument, whatever it is. Ask yourself why you stopped. Was it because you genuinely lost interest, or was it because someone told you it was unrealistic and you believe them? If it is the second one, I want you to consider giving it another shot, not because you need to prove something to anyone, but because you deserve to at least try. You deserve to see what happens when you don't give up on yourself. You deserve to look back in another 10 years and know that you gave it your best shot instead of wondering what could have been. I am going to end this video with something that Guy said in his post. He said at the end of the day, he is just some guy from Wisconsin who lives in his parents' basement. And well, yeah, maybe you probably shouldn't listen to him. And I feel that energy because that is exactly who I am too. I am just some normal guy trying to figure life out like everyone else. I don't have all the answers. I am not a guru. I am not a millionaire. I am not a life coach. I am just a regular dude who made a lot of mistakes and learned some things along the way. And if I can help even one person avoid the same mistakes I made, if I can help one person feel less alone in their struggles, if I can inspire one person to chase a dream they thought was dead, then this whole thing is worth it. So whether you are 18 or 28 or 38, whether you are broke or doing okay or crushing it, whether you have no idea what you are doing or you got everything figured out, just remember that it is never too late to start. It is never too late to change. It is never too late to chase something that matters to you. Peace. I am out here trying to figure it out just like you. Stick around if you want to come along for the ride.